Hello everyone, and welcome back to my World of Tanks Xbox 360 guide here with Stinger 1824. Today we are going to be talking about the E-50 Ausf.M, or as other people like to call it, the E-50M. So, let's talk about when you unlock this tank. When you unlock this tank, no research is required to unlock anything on the tank, and no gun research, nothing. Everything you see on this tank is what you are going to get right off. So, let's talk about the line leading up to this tank. The tanks on this line, on the medium line, are not bad, but some of them aren't great. For instance, well, I'm not really going to discuss the tier 5 to tier 6, but the VK30s and the VK36s are not bad tanks if they are top tiers. Say it's a tier 5 game or say a tier 6 game. Very good tanks, but anything higher, you are definitely more of a medium. These tanks here are on the slower side. But then you get into the Panther, and the Panther, I would say I liked it, but I didn't like it. The gun is really great on the Panther. That is one of the things I liked about the Panther. You basically have to play the Panther as a sniper, and then you get into the Panther 2, which isn't bad, and then you get to the E-50, and the E-50 has problems, but it doesn't have problems such as the engine is mounted in the front, and you are constantly getting your engine damaged or set on fire. What's great about that is once you get into the tier 10, you don't have that problem anymore. The engine is in the rear, guys. So if you can work your way up to this tank, unlike its other predecessors, all the others, the engine is in the front. You get to the E-50M, the engine is no longer in the front. So let's talk a little bit about the background of the tank. The German army demanded that the E-series tanks had transmissions positioned in the rear portion of the hull. This is what I was talking about. However, the E-50 and the E-75 tanks used the Tiger II engine transmission compartment, which made rear placement of the transmission impossible. So the E-50 Ausf.M tank was a redesign of the E-50 project with a rear placement of the transmission. So this is great to know, guys, whenever you guys get this tank. You no longer have to worry about getting set on fire from the front of this tank. So let's get right down to what this tank comes with. The turret is a tier 10 E-50 Ausf.M. The gun is a 10.5 centimeter. The engine is a Maybach HL235, and the suspension, of course, is a tier 10 E-50 Ausf.M, and your radio is a tier 10 TWSC. The hit points of the tank. This is one of the plus sides of having a German tank. You usually get a little bit more hit points than other tanks in the game. With this tank, you're going to get 2,050 hit points. That's 50 more than most of the medium tanks in the game. Most of the medium tanks in the game have 2,000 or less. So you might be able to take that extra hit. Signal range of this tank is 720 meters. Speed limit is 60 kilometers per hour. This tank can get up to speed very, very fast. The speed limit backwards is 20 kilometers per hour. This is another plus of the tank, is this tank weighs kind of more than other medium tanks. The weight of this tank is 62.31 tons. And the load limit when this tank is fully loaded is about 67 tons. So this tank is great at ramming, guys. You can ram the hell out of stuff in this tank. This tank can brawl with mediums, with other medium tanks, and even some heavy tanks, depending on what heavy tank it is. Let's talk about the crew of this tank. You're going to get a commander, a gunner, a driver, radio operator, and loader. So this tank comes standard with everything that you need. Let's talk about the hull armor of this tank. You are going to get 150 millimeters in the front, 80 millimeters on the side, 80 millimeters in the rear. Turret wise, the turret is 185 millimeters in the front, 80 millimeters on the side, 80 millimeters on the rear. Now, the front portion of the turret, since it is only 185 millimeters, can be pinned by the bigger guns in the game if you are looking directly at them. It is a very hard target to hit depending on how far away you are. You do have a very big gun mantle here covering the front portion of your turret, but it is a very, very flat surface. It is angled some, but it is somewhat pretty flat. Most tanks in the game are going to have problems getting through it, but most tank destroyers in the game are not going to have a hard time getting through that front plate of your turret. And your commander hatch is somewhat kind of small. It's not really too big of a target, which is a plus side, but that is a weak point on this tank, this commander hatch on top. Let's talk about the hull armor. I said it was 150 millimeters. That's pretty much just the lower plate, and it is a pretty small lower plate. It is very angled. It's very small. The upper plate is very, very bouncy. Nothing is going to get through the upper plate, guys. And angling wise, you can angle this tank very well. You can angle this tank maybe about like this to increase your effective armor. You do only have 80 millimeters on side, but it is very, you do have some angles here to work with. It looks like you have a little bit of spaced armor here. So you have some spaced armor here on the sides, so it'll protect you from arty and high explosive shells and so forth, especially like Death Star wise, if they hit you lower. Now if they hit the upper part of the side skirt, they're definitely going to mess you up. But if they hit the lower part here, their shell's just going to, any high explosive or heat shell, even the heat has massive amounts of penetration. If the heat hits the lower part, it's just going to bounce pretty much with your spaced armor, because heat penetrates the first part of the tank that it hits and then explodes on contact, so it pretty much acts as a high explosive, which is why it stands for heat. So yeah, for a medium tank, this is some pretty good armor. Even the rear is somewhat sloped in the rear, even though you have 80 millimeters. So that may be effective armor up to 100 millimeters. So I mean, it's still fairly weak. Let's talk about the engine power of this tank. You get a 1200 horsepower engine. Let's talk about the horsepower to weight ratio. You're gonna only get 19.26 horsepower to ton ratio. It's kind of lacking compared to other medium tanks. The acceleration of this tank will not be great, guys, but once you get up to speed, this thing will book it. Your traverse speed is 44 degrees per second, so you know you do have some traverse speed. You are somewhat mobile in this tank. You can do the circle of death on tank destroyers and heavy tanks in this tank without any real complications, really. Now, trying to run away and outmaneuver shots, that's a different scenario. This tank won't be great at doing that, at avoiding shots, really, if you're trying to evade. Fire chance in this tank, if you guys would want to know, is 12% chance of a fire, considering that the engine is rear mounted now, guys, so only 12% chance. That is way below average, and it is a gasoline engine. View range of this tank is 400 meters. That's pretty much standard on all tier 10s. Your turret traverse, the way that your turret rotates, is going to be 30 degrees per second. So that is somewhat pretty good also, guys. You're going to be able to lock onto targets fairly quick and fire your shot. Let's talk about the ammunition that this tank gets. This tank fires as its standard ammunition APCR armor piercing composite rigid rounds. That's pretty much for all tier 10 mediums. Most all tier 10 mediums fire armor piercing composite rigid rounds. Usually if you're in a lower medium tank, those are usually your premium rounds. This tank for premium rounds is going to fire heat. So this tank gets heat, and it also gets HE, high explosive rounds. Now your armor piercing composite rigid and your heat are going to do an average damage roll of about 390, and your high explosive is going to do an average damage roll of about 510 with a splash radius of 1.91 meters. So if you miss your target with your high explosive, you miss. Not much of a splash radius at all. Let's talk about the penetration of these shells. This tank gets a ridiculous amount of armor penetration with this APCR, guys. 270 millimeters of armor penetration with the APCR, 330 with the heat, and only 60 with HE. So really, you could just load APCR. To put that into perspective, I believe Waffen-Traeger Ausf. E-100s, with their standard ammunition, their penetration is 275 millimeters. So you only have 5 millimeters less than a Waffen-Traeger Ausf. E-100 or even some of the other tank destroyers down on the German line. There's another tank destroyer who also has, it's tier 9, who has armor pen of 275. So, you know, your APCR has excellent penetration power. I would load a couple of heat. You do get 330 millimeters of penetration just in case if there's a tank that's hulled down. You might be able to use your heat to pin them if they're hulled down and you're not able to hit any weak points. But this gun is very, very accurate, guys. So, let's talk about the shell price of the ammunition. Your APCR is only going to cost you 1,200 silver. Your high explosive costs a little bit more than that. Your high explosive is going to cost you 1,211. And your heat is going to cost you 12 gold, guys, or roughly about 4,000 silver, if I believe right. Let's check that out. Yeah, 4,800 silver is what your premium is going to cost you guys. Now let's talk about the shell speed. Your armor-piercing composite rigid rounds are going to fire a lot faster than your heat or your high explosive. Your armor-piercing composite rigid rounds are going to travel at 1,478 meters per second. You'll be able to hit your target a lot faster. Now your heat and your high explosive only travel at 1,173 meters per second. So let's talk about the damage per minute that this tank can put out. This tank can put out roughly about 2,437.5 hit points per minute with APCR and heat. With high explosive, it is capable of doing 3,187.5. But do not count on that because you're going to be going up against some very big tanks. The tanks in this game are heavily armored, and your high explosive does not have the penetration to do that amount of damage, so don't expect to do that. Rate of fire in this tank is 6.25 rounds per minute. Your reload time is going to be 9.6 seconds. You can get that down with various skills, perks, and equipment. This is one of the slower firing medium tanks in the game. It's not the slowest, but it is not the fastest. As you're going up to get to this tank, the other medium tanks that you played, such as the Panther 2, and even the E-50, you know, those guns kind of fired somewhat kind of quickly. This gun, not so much. It does, you're gonna lose some rate of fire. But the accuracy is amazing, guys. 0.3 meter accuracy. That is ridiculous. This thing can fire. This tank can play sniper. This gun is an excellent gun, guys. Probably the best gun on a medium tank, accuracy-wise. Aim time is 2.10 seconds. Not bad. Let's talk about the gun depression and the gun elevation. You do have some gun depression to work with. You're going to get about 8 degrees of gun depression. Not much, but you're going to get some gun depression. You're not going to be able to look completely over hills like the Patton or even the Tier 10 British, the FV202. Those tanks there have excellent gun depression. This tank, not so much a great gun depression, but it does have some. You do get a high amount of rounds in this tank. You do get 48 rounds. I have not expended all my ammo with this tank in a match. Let's talk about camo values of this tank. While stationary, you're going to get about an 8% camo value. While in motion, you're going to get about 3% camo value. And when firing, you're going to get about 1.72% camo value. So basically, when you fire your gun, you're going to have basically no camo value. Now, these camo values are based off of you not hiding in a bush, nothing. This is just out in the open if this was to happen. Now, hiding within a bush or within a knockdown tree, or putting camouflage on your tank, or having the camouflage skill or camouflage net, you know, those values go up. So just keep that in mind. Let's talk about the battle performance of this tank. People firing this gun in battles are hitting their targets about 78.4% of the time. People's win rate in this tank is about 51.4%. The damage dealt in an average battle for people in this tank is about 1,968, and kills per battle is, I would say, 1 kill per battle with this tank. So just remember those battle performances and just compare yourself to how other people are doing, and you would know if you're doing great or bad in this tank, if this tank is suited for you or not. So with that in mind, let's talk about a little bit about strategies in this tank. This tank can be... This tank is kind of an all-around do-it kind of tank. I mean, it's not a heavy tank. It's a medium tank. This tank is great at flanking. You want to flank stuff. You can spot. You can snipe. You can brawl with other medium tanks and get them out of the way if you have to. You have the speed to get out of danger if you need to. Relocate. it's just an all-around great tank. You don't want to be leading the charge in this tank. You can be up with the heavy tanks, supporting the heavy tanks in this tank, is basically what I'm trying to say. You don't want to be the one taking the hits, but you can be somewhat of a front runner in this tank. Second line defense or second line offense in this tank. So let's talk about equipment that you should put on this tank. Equipment you're going to want to put on this tank is improved ventilation class. It's going to add 5% to all your crew skills. You're going to want a medium caliber tank gun rammer because you do have a slower rate of fire. It'll get that rate of fire up, and a vertical stabilizer because you're going to be moving around a lot in this tank. You are a medium tank. You're going to want a vertical stabilizer. It's going to add plus 20% to your accuracy during movement and turret rotation. So your firing on the move is going to be excellent, considering you have a 0.3 meter accuracy, guys. Let's talk about the supplies. Supply-wise, you could go with a large repair kit, large first aid kit, and probably chocolate. If you don't want one of these three, I would not really bother with a fire extinguisher. I mean, you could go with a fire extinguisher or even an automatic fire extinguisher, but the octane gasoline may even be an option for you because you do have somewhat of a slow acceleration, a horsepower to weight ratio. This will get that horsepower to ratio up, especially this one. It's going to add a plus 10%. So that's going to be great for you if you need more mobility. So if you're looking to get the gasoline, I would go with octane gasoline, chocolate, and a large repair kit, and skip the first aid kit. So guys, with that in mind, I'm going to leave you guys with a replay and to show you what this tank is capable of doing. And I will be commentating during it to let you guys know what I was going through my mind at the time of the battle. Alright everyone, here we are on Westfield Standard Battle. This is probably one of my least favorite maps in the game. It seems like this can either go by really fast or it is really slow and drawn out. You definitely have to play smart on this map. That's particularly why I don't really like this map too much. Some people just go right out and are, balls to the wall. They pop their head up over the hill and get themselves killed. They get tracked. They die. So, of course, at the beginning of the match, I look to see what tanks I'm going to be going up against. So now my idea right now is I'm going to go over to this hill and hopefully get some side shots on tanks that are maybe trying to push too aggressively on either side. This tank does have the accuracy and the movement. Now, in this game, this is not going to be particularly one of my greatest games. I'm showing you guys this game just to show you guys that I have bad games. Even when my team does really well, I stink like a donkey. But I'm going to show you guys, I feel like this is the replay that shows you guys what this tank can do. Now here we go, we have a bunch of tanks over there. I'm showing you guys what the gun depression is like going over there for this video, so you guys can see how much of your tank you can expose. Now you do get a little bit more gun depression if you angle your tank to the side and you aim down. So here we go. We have an angling. I fire. I got a shot in on him. I also take a hit. That's an autoloader. I don't want to be sitting there. Very surprised that he was able to pin me. I'm not exactly sure where he pinned me at. I just thought I just maybe had my turret exposed. My guess is maybe I had my lower plate exposed as well. But I decided I need to get up off this hill. I am a German tank. This tank has lots of good angles, so I'm going to head into the town. Now, as I'm heading into town here, I make a crucially big mistake. I am exposing too much of my tank here. And there I take a hit. I did not think that he was going to be able to hit me. I thought that those were going to obstruct him there. I mean, I know that they can be blown off and you can be hit, but I was hoping that there was enough obstruction that he would hit my tracks or something. But as you can see, I took 2 big hits there, it looks like. He wasn't the one who shot me. It looks like I got two big shots. Now, here we go. We have an FV 202. Now, I'm angling my armor now. There's no way these guys are going to be able to pin me there. Look at the accuracy on the gun. I was able to hit his commander hatch from this distance. Now here he starts to get a little bit smart. He starts moving his tank around, which is extremely smart. There, I couldn't pin. Now if he was just going to stay there, I would have been able to continuously pin his hatch all day. But you guys can see the accuracy of this gun. You guys can hit weak spots in this tank from a distance. So just remember that, guys. I mean, you guys don't have to be looking at their whole tank. Now, I know I'm not going to be able to pin his turret there. But, see, they realize they ain't going to pin me either. I am extremely angled. I'm not even detected anymore. I am detecting them. There, I fire. Couldn't do anything there.
That one didn't go through.
But now I'm going to back off. I fired. I don't want to be sitting in one place. Remember, there's still artillery, and in the spot I'm in, artillery can still get me. So I'm keeping my tank moved, even though I probably didn't have to move because I had my tank extremely well angled right there. There's no way he's going to pin me from right here. Now this here isn't great angling. I'm just kind of out here, but it'd still be a pretty difficult shot for him to make. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm trying to get a shot. No good. Now here, it looks like that shot there came from the other side of the map. That just blew out that building. There's guys on the other side of the map. That was a heat round or an APCR round. I shouldn't say that was a heat round. But as you can see, we've done pretty well. I mean, I haven't done well myself. As you guys can see, I've only hit my targets twice. But you know what? I was doing a good job spotting. So now there, I finish him off and get myself a kill. That was a critical hit also. Just playing cleanup work. There, I'm getting shot in the butt from the tanks across from the map. But here, I'm going to show you guys the evasive capabilities. You know, I'm still spotted. They can still see me clear across the other side of the map. And there's still a T-57 Heavy alive. Here's a Conqueror. He's hold down. Here I'm trying to get a shot on him as I'm moving, but I'm also worried about the other tanks that are on the other side over there. There I take another hit. That shot ricochets off. I was gonna ram him. So I was gonna show you guys the ramming capabilities of this tank. Now there's a T-57 Heavy. He hits my turret. There a ricochet, or he misses. But I'm going to ricochet some shots here coming down the hill. You guys can see the speed of this sucker. I'm spotting the hell out of him now. This is pretty much over with. We all know where artillery's at, but I'm not going to go artillery hunt. I'm just trying to salvage my tank at this point. So I realize this match is pretty much over. I'm just running around victory. So I hope I guys showed you guys what this tank is capable of doing. I mean, I've had some great games in this tank, but I figured this was the best replay to show you guys what this tank can do. I didn't do personally well. I do have bad games. I still made a profit. Still got some pretty good experience for my double XP. So it just shows you don't have to have a great game to do fairly well. I mean, this was my 2 times multiplier, and I got a 2,536 experience. So, you know, I would have done 1,000. So I'd have been happy with myself to do 1,000 over a 1,000 game. Anything below that, you know, I feel, see right here, I'm at the below of the game, but, you know, I did almost 1,000 spot damage. So, you know, that was great. Thank you guys for watching.